Episode 2, our Geeky origin story.
Welcome to the Visionary Variety Podcast, where we cover cool stuff like photo, video, film, books, and technology. So switch on your brain and enjoy the show.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Visionary Variety Podcast. We didn't scare you away with episode 1. You're back for more. So today we're going to be talking about a few news items that's come up in the media, and then we're going to talk about where our nerdiness began. So kind of an origin story for each of our geekiness, from going back to our childhood, sort of a trip down memory lane. Should be a lot of fun. Maybe a little bit embarrassing, I hope. That'll be good. So big news, first of all, is we've got a regular guest with us today. Her name is Angela Brock. Say hi, Angela.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Ooh, we're honored. So Angela is a new friend of mine, and she's going to be a pretty regular guest on this podcast. So Angela, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, hey, guys. I'm Angela, and I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I am a self-taught artist. I've been drawing ever since I was a little kid, and it has been my main interest throughout my entire life. While it's been a hobby for the most part throughout the years, the last couple of years I've been able to sell my artwork professionally as like a side job. I have traveled to several comic conventions, and I have sold prints and done commissions for clients there. I'm also really into movies. My favorite genres being fantasy, sci-fi, superhero movies. I like both DC and Marvel. I tend to lean more towards the Marvel side, though. And I'm also really into video games. I've been into games probably throughout my whole life as well with the drawing. I think drawing and gaming is probably two of my big hobbies right there. And yeah, that's about it.
All right, so thanks, Angela. That's awesome. We are honored to have you with us and the team here. So first, we're going to get this episode started with 3 quick news items that have come up in the recent week. Nate, I believe you've got the first one.
The Solo movie that's coming out. Finally, we get a trailer. I'm so excited.
Yes, it's real.
I know. I'm not gonna lie. I was concerned that we were just gonna see the movie, no trailers or nothing. So, I think we were talking earlier. There's only a little over 100 days or something fun like that until the actual showing. So, but I was quite, this is going to sound funny, but I was quite floored to see it, and the visuals are awesome.
Yeah, they are.
You just kind of have to get over the fact that it's not Harrison Ford, just like we all get over the fact when we watch James Bond, they're all not the same character, but we love the character. But yeah, no, the Solo movie, I watched it and the extended. And that's probably about as far as I'm going to get on the trailers, because I'm going to want to be surprised when I go in the actual movie theater and watch it. So,
yeah.
Already I have questions and thoughts about it, and I have a few nitpicks that I'll save for another time. But I'm really looking forward to seeing the Solo movie coming up here.
Yeah.
I think May.
Yeah, it looks like a good action movie. I mean, Rogue One was definitely a war movie. This is an action movie. It looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks pretty cool. A lot of fun details. I mean, the visuals are great. Lots of fast-paced action. Was that a Maz Kanata cameo when she's going into the pilot of the Millennium Falcon?
Oh, snap. I didn't even notice
It
that.
looks like her. Yeah, it looks like she's walking up and taking the covers off of the controls there. I don't know. It might be another alien that looks like her. But that would be cool. A little callback, kind of making connections from Force Awakens.
Wow.
We'll see. Lots of new robots and a lot of humans. Not a whole lot of aliens, but except for that crazy guy on the beach. Was he on a beach with the mask? The Kylo Ren mask? I don't know.
It looks like a bounty hunter.
Yeah, he's probably a bounty hunter or some kind of big bad. So it looks really exciting.
Am I the one who's most looking forward to seeing like Woody Harrelson's character in this movie?
Oh wait, who's that?
He was the guy with like the scraggly hair and the beard. He was in the Hunger Games.
Yes, I did not see that coming.
I know, they took me by surprise. I'm like, oh my gosh.
And why is Han Solo like running away from police with a child in his vehicle.
Yeah.
Who is this child, and why does he have him? I thought that was young Solo, and that was his dad driving. And like that's his like rough childhood, running away from police. But then I realized, wait, that's Solo driving. Who's the kid?
Just stole it.
Yeah,
I
just
don't
stealing
know.
kids.
Smuggling
I already
kids.
have some
I mean, he's
takes on
involved with
that.
smuggling.
Yeah, there you go. That's pretty dark, actually.
Oh gosh. Anyway, moving on. Next item. What do we have next on the list?
How about the new Infinity War trailer that debuted during the Super Bowl? Have you guys seen that?
Ooh. Yes, I didn't see the Super Bowl, but
Yeah, same here. Admittedly.
Get out.
What is
Go
that?
home.
What are sports?
I do not sport. Yes, the trailer looks cool. What were your first impressions of it?
I mean, honestly, if you've seen the trailer, they just tacked on an extra 30 seconds to the original first trailer, so that was a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing that I personally noticed that was newly revealed was they showed off, like, Cap's new shield gauntlets, which
Yes.
they look pretty rad.
We totally called that, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember us
Yeah.
talking about that before. I'm wondering if that's what they were going to do, and, well, looks like that's how they're going to go about it, so that's pretty sweet.
I guess he's just gonna like hang his old shield up on his wall as like decoration, or I don't mean what.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. I guess.
Retire it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks cool. I don't know if it constitutes being called a new trailer because it's literally like 35 seconds of new
Yeah,
footage
I
and
know.
then the old trailer. And it
So-
caught me off guard. Like I was watching the quote unquote new trailer and I'm like, oh my gosh, new stuff. And then like the music stops and it like goes to black. And then the old trailer comes in with different tone and different timing. And I'm like, whoa, what?
Yeah, like I was wondering if they were going to throw in any extra scenes, like
Yeah, me
with
too.
the old trailer at the very end. No.
Nope. It just was like really badly. I don't know who put that together or if that's even official. It was weird.
Yeah, it's a little.
Well, the solo trailer. The solo trailer has an extended version too, and it's similar. It's like the old trailer and then new stuff randomly on the end,
Yeah.
Freaking Disney.
and they don't match. they don't like go with each other.
Yeah,
Disney.
Disney needs to get their act together with their trailers.
But we're all super excited to see Infinity War. So I
Whoa.
can't wait.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait to see Spider-Man in space.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with
Iron
him.
Spider.
Space Spider.
I know. Did you
Space
y'all see his
Spider.
did you see his new Iron Spider-Man suit?
Yeah, he's got an upgrade.
Mhm. Oh yeah, that's right.
And speaking of upgrades, Iron Man's suit is like organically growing onto his body.
That's what it looks like. Yeah.
What the heck? Yeah, it's like nanobots or something crazy, like a
Mm.
Black Panther suit or something.
Very sleek.
So very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Excited to see that. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the new multi-billion-dollar Iron Man suit. Every time there's a world threat.
Every single
cool.
time. He's got like the largest wardrobe out of all the Avengers.
Well, did you watch? Did either of y'all watch the old cartoon, the old Iron Man cartoon back in the day?
No,
I did.
I have not.
It was old. I think it was mid '90s because I remember seeing it before I even watched like Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, cartoons. It was older than that, and I remember there was multiple times where they showed him in his house, and there was literally a huge, like almost bottomless pit, where on the walls of the circular pit were all his suits just lined up next to each other. I mean, there were suits like for every possible scenario. It was
That's
like
crazy.
the really bad Batman toys. You know how there's like a suit for everything.
Yeah.
I hate that crap.
It's so funny.
But not as
Yeah.
bad as the nipples on the Spider-Man. I think.
Oh.
Forgot what Batman.
Wait, Spider-Man
it
has
was.
nipples now?
No. I think he means
meant
Batman.
Batman.
Please
my
tell me you're
bad.
talking
Batman,
about Batman. Okay.
Batman,
had me
like
worried
in the
there for a
90s or
second.
80s or whatever. They give him the bat nipples.
Bat nipples.
Who came up with that? And just, I want to know why.
Well, the Batman and Robin one was the big. I don't know if the other movies previous had them as
No.
featured as they did in Batman and Robin.
I'm pretty sure they did not.
There's probably grappling hooks embedded into them just in case.
Oh,
you know,
that
like
sounds terrible.
No, they're
If
not.
his hands are
grappling hooks.
tied,
Those
I
are the airbags when he falls.
Cushion just
Okay.
okay. That's
and that's our
Imagery.
cue to move on.
right.
Next. All right, so the last and final thing of our news items today is I have finally finished all of the PAX South cosplay images. So
Woohoo.
for those of you who may be newer to my work or aren't familiar with what I do, in my photography work is I go to cosplay conventions, like Comic-Con and PAX and San Japan here in San Antonio. A lot of conventions right here in town. We're super lucky. And I go to the conventions with Nate usually, and I will photograph cosplayers, and I do all kinds of crazy stuff with the cosplayers, get cool photos, and then I really go to town on the editing, and that's something that I just really love is just doing this crazy edits and special effects and all that stuff. So yeah, PAX South was January. I went on January 12th and 13th and photographed 19. Well, I did 19 different mini photo shoots of cosplayers, which is insane.
Oh man.
And it took me since then to finish them, which is like over a month.
Oh wow.
Well, actually, just under a month. So yeah, they're all done. So if you want to see those cool photos, go to my Facebook, or you can go to danielgrovephoto.com/PAX or PAX and then 2018. And let me know what you think. If you got a favorite, let me know. Just want to share that because they're super fun. All right, so moving on. So for this podcast, as the title hints, we're going to talk about our origin stories. So Nate, I believe you're first. Why don't you tell us where it all began?
Well, I'm gonna have to rewind the clock a lot because it goes back to grandparents. Yeah, no, it goes pretty far back. So, anyways,
Nice.
my
Don't go that far back.
yeah, pretty far. My dad's dad, so my grandfather, was really into the original Star Trek. He had like the 1-to-1 recording reel, I think, like that they had in the actual TV show. And
Wow.
Whoa.
and so he was also very into tech and gears and gadgets. And he was actually, at least according to my dad, he was the first in his circle of people to have a colored 19-inch TV.
That's
And
awesome.
so it was, yeah, no, it was cool. And then on the flip side of things, on my mom's side, my grandfather, of course, he was also very into the Star Trek. Two totally different people, different sides of the United States, but they're both very into much the same thing. He had, I think, 1/16th scale of the USS on his top of his TV, and
That's awesome.
he never went to college to be an engineer, but he was totally cool getting his hands, in electronics and figuring it out. And one time their TV went out, and he doesn't have a background in engineer, but he pulled everything apart and put it back together, and it worked. So,
Nice.
Wow.
and then the fun, geeky, fun dressing up stuff that I love doing. He loved impersonating Elvis. So he was
The original cosplay idol.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
he was very into impersonating Elvis.
That's
So,
cosplay.
so he liked the original Star Wars and Star Trek. And then, as a generation moved down, my dad actually was one of the first people in his circle of things to see the Star Wars opener right before it was an actual thing. I think he told me that the week after people actually started catching and making big deals, and it started being more and more of a commercial. So he actually saw the opening day with, not even his own family. And my uncle, he had enough comic books to open a small comic book store. He was a collector.
Wow.
And so, my dad was on the techie side. So if you had tech questions, you'd go ask him, growing up. And then my uncle was, knew all the Marvel, DC. He was more Marvel than DC. But so if I ever had a question, I go ask him and ask how things like interlapsed and connected and cross path. And
He was the original Wikipedia for you?
pretty much growing up. And then, of course, if he didn't answer my question, I'd either have to go watch the TV show or the cartoon or go look it up in the library or something until, I figured out the internet. And then moving forward, my mom and my dad, as they got married, they, continued to watch Star Wars, and they were very tech savvy. My parents actually own their own computer company. And so they were, hands-on, techie, nerdy, having fun with just life. And as things transitioned, my dad actually got more into the engineer role of stuff. So like I said, my dad was the tech side of things. He likes all the cool gadgets and technology and bells and whistles. And my uncle was kind of, the comic book nerd. So, and then it trickles down to me and my sisters. And myself, I remember being young and sitting at the table with my parents or grandparents or even my uncle, and just talk about some stuff. And somehow, the new movie would come out, and we'd go down this rabbit trail about, this and that and technology, and everybody really geek out. And then I remember when my dad would have two of his best friends over. They were in the same industry that he was, and one was more into like the technical side of things and building in computers, which leads to Star Wars and Star Trek and sci-fi. And the other guy was more of an engineer, but he was really more of a hands-on. Like he loved all that stuff, but he was actually more practical. And so it was really cool being young and actually to this day still knowing them and talking to them. We get to go back and forth. And so myself personally, and then I would dig into information that I'd want to know and know how things worked. And I fell in love with Star Wars, Star Trek, sci-fi, Marvel, DC, and so on. And I just kept it going. And I have actually cosplayed a couple times. My family and I have actually sat down and watched all of the Star Wars old and new trilogy, and even the newest trilogy, newest. And my dad's actually been cool enough to cosplay with me. We were vacation troopers, and so he had the original trilogy stormtrooper, a Hawaii shirt, and some
vacation troopers.
Casual stormtroopers.
And then I had the First Order helmet, a bathrobe, and some basketball shorts on, and some slippers.
Gosh.
So you should have had like Death Star soaps and just handed them out.
Oh, I wish.
So funny.
Gosh,
that would have been hilarious.
Been amazing.
Or
I like Vacation Trooper because there's like 50 different kinds of troopers and they all have their name. But I like Vacation Trooper the best.
Yeah. Somewhere in my deep files of stuff, I actually have a video I put together of us walking around. But and then, my sisters kind of have their version of being a geeky kind of stuff. So we've gone back and forth, and they're not really into it, but of course they're into it. They just won't make a big deal about it.
Undercover geeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like we've sat down and watched at least six in a row of the Star Wars stuff. So it was pretty cool. And then I think it was 2017. I finally got my sisters and my parents convinced that we needed to not do an original traditional Christmas card. And so we got Daniel to actually do our photo shoot for our Christmas card, and we were all Jedis, and it turned out really cool. And
awesome.
At that time, it was cool to do a mannequin challenge, and it turned out really cool when people were walking up.
Back in the day.
Yeah, people were walking up to us, and they're like, "Why are you so cool?" And it's just like, it's like, why?
Because we do mannequin challenges.
Yeah, like we did a mannequin challenge, and now all of a sudden we're the cool family. And
oh wow!
But awesome. It just depends on how you package it up. Yeah, I could go, my own personal route. I can go to. It's really into the family. We definitely would sit down and, we would sit down every Independence Day and 4th of July and watch Independence Day, and it became a thing.
Watch America get destroyed.
Yeah, pretty much, and how we all reunite in America strong, and
and then the cheesy president speech will inspire you. And
yeah, you can't watch. You cannot have 4th of July without Will Smith and aliens.
Yeah,
and
I need to make that a family tradition for myself. I got little kids, so we need to start it now.
Yeah, definitely. And then we would watch, and we'd watch all that stuff. There's a lot of humor in my family, so there was a lot of other things we'd sit down and watch. And then we actually would dissect a lot of movies and TV shows that we'd sit down and laugh.
I love that. That's my favorite.
And we're currently trying to figure out what our next Christmas card is going to be. We just did the last one, but we're thinking this upcoming one is going to probably be more geeky, nerdy.
Oh,
hopefully,
boy.
We're hoping. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of wrapping myself around with friends and family that are geeky, nerdy,
nice
and stuff. And
good choice.
You got a family legacy of just geekiness and like techiness, which is awesome.
Yeah, it goes all the way from me, then parents, then their parents.
3 generations.
So, I'm pretty sure if there was another generation of geeky stuff, I'm sure I don't even know. So, but yeah, it's just really, it's awesome in a lot of ways, and some, it's been kind of funny because you walk in my room and I have a picture of CP3, R2D2, and BB-8. I have lightsabers, helmets around, and people are like,
nice.
I'm like, it's okay. I'm not a child. I like stuff like this. And they're like, Nate. And I'm like, chill, okay? Like, it's really cool. So, and I'm like, I'm just a big kid that has money. I'm just a big kid that has money. So, responsibilities come second. I'm just joking. But
you had money, and you had money before you bought all this cool stuff.
Exactly. No, that's not true. I try my hardest to be responsible and the nerdy stuff.
to save up money so you can buy more cool stuff.
Yeah, I got to be responsible enough to buy the next cool thing. Yeah, right. Yeah. Wookiee suits and Darth Vader suits
I
are
like it.
down the road, and $2,400 or more for a Vader suit, and
Oh
$7,000 or
gosh.
more for a Wookiee suit. So we're saving. You know, I think about making a GoFundMe.
Get a second job.
Yeah, no, I did, but you know, apparently I need another one. And so I'm thinking about making a GoFundMe called Fund the Wookiee. But
Oh my gosh, no.
so,
No.
or Feed the Wookiee, or Fund the Fur, or
Make a wish. You start a Make-A-Wish Foundation for
Yeah.
yourself.
yeah, fund the carpet. I don't know, something that
Fund
Disney
the
won't,
carpet.
something Disney won't come after me. But so to basically wrap it all up, that's basically, you know, it goes from grandparents to parents to aunts and uncles to me and siblings, and
Sweet.
it's just kind of all been passed on and stuff that
And one day the spawnlings of Nate will carry on the legacy
Oh god,
of nerdiness.
but that wraps it up for me on,
I'm gonna
on
use
the
that term from
geeky
now on.
origin story. At least that's my geeky origin story. I mean,
I like it.
so
All right, so next up, Angela, why don't you tell us what happened to you?
How did I end up the
What's
way
wrong
that I
with
am
you?
today? Oh my gosh. Ugh. That's a very long story. I feel I gotta condense it because I swear I've been into geeky stuff ever since I could basically function. It's the best way to put it. All right.
Nice.
I guess I'll backpedal a little bit like they did and say that I guess geekiness is kind of run in my family like a little bit, maybe not through as many generations as his family has, but my family has pretty much all been into like Star Wars and sci-fi movies, superhero movies, video games even. So they've pretty much like established like all that in my family before I came around.
Mm-hmm.
So like I got exposed to video games at a really early age because my sister owned a bunch of the consoles that came out like back in the 90s before I was born.
Sweet.
So I grew up like basically playing Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt on the NES, Sonic the Hedgehog, Aladdin, the Lion King games on the Sega Genesis.
Those are great.
Oh yeah, those are all really good games. You wouldn't think that like Aladdin and Lion King wouldn't be just because they're like movie tie and stuff, but no, they did it right back in the day.
Yeah, they're good platformers.
They are, really. It's amazing how well they've held up all these years. And that kind of extended on like into later generations of consoles. We got like Nintendo 64, PlayStation.
Yeah.
Earliest memories of actually being good at games was when I was playing like Super Mario 64 and being able to finally get through that game for the first time. I think that was like a real achievement for myself at like elementary school age.
It's a big deal. Those are hard games.
Yeah, most definitely. Like the controls back in the 64 days were not the best when they were still figuring out like 3D gaming technology and moving the camera around the characters and such. But video games ended up leading me to my first big geek obsession, I think, and that's with the Pokemon games.
Oh
Yeah, I got exposed to those when I was about 8 years old. I think I saw like a few episodes of the anime first, and then I was interested in trying out the games. And I owned the original Game Boy games like Pokemon Red, Pokemon Silver, Pokemon Crystal, and I don't even want to know how many hours I've sunk into those games when I was a kid. I know I sunk probably hundreds of hours into those. I don't know. I think I was maybe legitimately addicted, and that's really sad because there was a point I can remember clearly where I was probably I was supposed to be doing homework, and I was playing on the Game Boy instead. So my mom would like take the Game Boy and hide it somewhere, so I wouldn't be playing, and I'd be trying to hunt like throughout the house trying to find it.
I know it's here. I feel its presence. It's calling to me.
It was pretty sad. Oh my gosh. And I ended up like owning like a bunch of toys. I got some of the trading cards.
Oh yeah, those are addictive, man. I was hooked on those cards. It was bad.
Yeah, luckily for me, the cards weren't like a big addiction point just because I didn't have any money as a kid and my parents were not going to shell out any cash for those. So I just got like a little moderate little collection of those. Basically, after all of that said and done, Pokemon ended up giving me, I think, my first heartbreak as a kid. Unfortunately, you guys remember back in the day when the preachers caught on to the Pokemon craze and started saying that it was demonic and there's satanic symbols and all that inside? Yeah. My mom caught wind of all that. And once she did, she was basically told me, nope, everything Pokemon's got to go.
Yeah.
It's all got to get thrown out. We're not having that in this house. And I was devastated.
Oh,
It
so
was so
awful.
sad. Yeah, I have a very distinct memory of loading up like a couple of trash bags worth of toys and books.
Crying
And,
the whole time.
I'm sure there were tears, and I'm sure there was probably some bargaining attempts made.
Mhm.
None of it worked, of course. Oh man, I really hope that we didn't not sell
The bargaining.
Yeah. I'm really hoping that we didn't throw out the games, because that would have been a travesty. Hopefully my sister was able to sell them or something, because I know they're worth a pretty penny nowadays.
Yeah. I love the original. Like, I had a Game Boy Color, and I love the first two Pokemon games, Red and Blue.
Oh yeah.
Like, they were great, just fun, just immersive games, and they're so simple, but they were great.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure they sucked kids in just with the whole "gotta catch 'em all" phrase of collecting everything. And oh my gosh, yeah, that got me.
Genius
pretty
marketing.
good. It really is. Like, they knew how to grab hold of kids' attention and just keep them hooked for hours and hours and hours.
Kind of like Satan, huh?
Oh snap! Maybe they were
Oh snap!
right.
It's coming back. Sorry.
Oh, gosh, no, it's okay.
Carry
That's
on.
funny.
You heard nothing.
But luckily, I think whatever sadness I was probably experiencing after having to get rid of all that stuff was mitigated, because I latched onto some new obsessions soon after that when I was around 10 years old. My dad kind of introduced me to the Lord of the Rings series.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Good.
When I got introduced, we owned the first movie already. And my dad and my sister were they liked the movies a lot, and my dad was a big fan of the books, like back in the 70s, like soon after they were released. And he was telling me about the plot of the movie, just to see if I would get interested in watching the films along with them. And obviously I did. I was interested, sat down and watched the movie, and I was just like hooked instantly, which surprises me at the same time, because at the time when I watched the movie for the first time, I was I was a bit of a wuss. Like a really, really, really big wuss when it came to just media, like violent media, basically. Like, I couldn't stand seeing blood or anything creepy. I would just like shield my eyes and like run out of the room. It was that
There's
bad.
There's some creepy stuff in those movies.
There
They're
is.
pretty dark for a younger,
like the
scaredy
orcs and
cat
stuff.
kid.
They were very creepy, especially
And
back
the ring
then.
wraiths and
Oh yes, they're so
Gollum.
creepily awesome. But no, I guess the plot of the movie just kind of hit home or something with me. It just like struck a chord. So I wanted to get more invested with it. I started reading the books soon after I watched the first movie. And that's a pretty big feat, in my opinion, for like a 10, 11-year-old to read.
Oh yeah.
Through all
I
those
tried
books.
when I was like 12 or 13. I tried, but I couldn't get through like the first like 2 chapters. It was
really?
too dense. Oh,
Yeah, Tolkien definitely like packs his books with like a lot of
man.
information.
yeah.
So it can be a little bit of a slug to read through, but it's all really good. It's still really good. I ended up reading those books like 5 times within the span of 5 years.
I'm so jealous of you.
Yeah, along with The Hobbit. I just love them
Nice.
so much. But yeah, I ended up watching, I don't even want to know how many times I've watched those movies. It's like probably upwards of 20 times. I think I watched the commentaries, all that. I was just so invested in those movies. And I ended up reading the Silmarillion after reading the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And
Love
for those
it.
who don't know, like the Silmarillion basically details the rest of the history of the world in Lord of the Rings, the history of Middle Earth before the events in Lord of the Rings. It's thousands of history. No, let me restart that. It's thousands of years worth of history.
Yeah.
Basically.
It's like Genesis. It's like the Genesis book of Lord of the Rings world, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, there's creation, literally. Like the first chapter is the creation, and
Yep,
it
there
goes through
is.
the whole thing.
Yep,
Yeah, it's cool.
definitely. So I think I ended up reading through that book twice. And I'm pretty sure, this is going to sound really geeky, but I'm pretty sure that there was a time where I was more familiar with the history of Middle Earth than I was in real life history.
That's awesome.
Oh, it's so pathetic to like actually say that, but No, I think that is absolutely true. Like I've lost a lot of that knowledge now, but at
Hmm.
one point I was a super nerd for Tolkien. I even had a Tolkien handbook, which
Oh, wow.
basically was an encyclopedia
Hmm.
for
All the
anything.
references.
Yeah, like it would have keywords for like all the different races, all the different terms for things, the geography, all that jazz. It had everything, and I'm pretty sure I read that book in its entirety.
Awesome.
But let's, but yeah, I owe a lot of that, owe a lot to that series to kind of helping me grow up as a kid.
Hmm.
Got like a good bit braver, ventured to watch more like action driven stories, and it
Yeah.
got me really into the fantasy genre a lot. Kind of got me into like playing RPG games like more.
Hmm.
So I definitely owe a lot to that series.
Cool.
And the final thing I'll probably touch upon that really affected me throughout my childhood was Dragon Ball Z.
Oh,
Were any of you guys into
yes.
that? Yeah.
Oh, I was way into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
High
got into
school.
that when I was about 10 years old. And I think that was the first one of the first animes that I was introduced to and got really attached to. But I think Pokemon was the first, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, but it really influenced my art style, like growing up.
Yeah.
I drew a lot of Dragon Ball Z characters because I was really enamored with the art style. It was
Hmm.
more realistic than say like drawing Rugrats or something, which I
Yeah.
did as a kid too. The character design was just, it was really amazing to me. But
Yeah. It was simple, but it was interesting.
yeah, I think I got to a point where I pretty much mastered like drawing in that art style. I drew in it so much.
Cool.
I drew tons of comics, like drawing in that art style, and that really helped
Hmm.
evolve like my drawing skills.
Yeah. Same with me.
Just having to draw like a bunch of different poses and comics and
Hmm.
the martial arts stances, all
Yeah.
that.
Different angles of people's bodies and faces.
Exactly. So I really owe that series to getting me drawing a lot, and that's really funny to say
Cool.
because nowadays I draw in a more realistic kind of portrait style. So it's really funny to say, oh, drawing in this anime style helped
Yeah.
form my abilities today.
No, it's the same with me. I got kind of tired of drawing anime in a sense, or rather, I wanted to do more realistic. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, anime was a huge stepping stone for me learning anatomy
Mm-hmm.
and, clothing and all that stuff that you need to know to draw photorealistic. And it was
Mm-hmm.
just like a great stepping stone for me.
I completely agree.
Cool.
But yeah, I think that's about it for my story.
Nice. Very interesting. Thank you guys. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
A little embarrassing, but, it's good to laugh. It's good
Exactly.
to look back and be like, wow.
Ah, man, I was a geek.
I am cool. I
Whatever.
have friends.
I'm normal. Oh man. All right. Well, for me, it's similar to Angela's story in that like far back as I can remember, I enjoyed nerdy stuff, whether it's a sci-fi movie or action movies and the futuristic ones or fantasy, all that stuff. I've always been into it. I feel like movies were a big influence on my life, and not that I went out to see movies a lot, but I remember watching movies on TV like regularly, like the replays and reruns before cable like exploded. They actually showed good movies on TV. If you remember that time. And so we'd watch we catch a movie on TV. It's like, hey, Stargate's on, and everyone would just run to the living room. We just stop what we're doing and we would just watch the movie,
Nice.
because if you miss it, you can't replay it. So yeah, a lot of movies I remember watching as a kid, like Johnny Five was a good robotic movie that got me like really into robotics. I played with Legos like intensely throughout my childhood, and one of the things that I liked to do was robotic stuff. And I actually learned a lot about engineering from robotics. I learned a lot of engineering and robotics from Legos.
Mm.
So Johnny Five, Independence Day, Nate, family tradition there. Awesome movie. I loved it, especially the White House exploding scene. I was like, how do they do that? This is blowing my mind. And it's special effects scenes in these movies that really caught my imagination, because I wanted to know, first of all, how do they do it, and then on the flip side, like what if this was real? Like, well, if this spaceship that I'm looking at is real, how would it work? Did you guys have those cutaway books from like Star Wars and the Titanic and castles and stuff? It would like show the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I love those books, man. The Star Wars ones were my favorites, but there was a lot of other cool ones that I remember seeing, like about castles and the Titanic and stuff. It would show like a cutaway of, what's inside, the engine room, what's inside the whole, if you cut the ship in half, what does it look like? So those kinds of things inspired me in my art, but also in my mind to think, deeper. And just don't like look at a ship and say, yeah, it's a cool ship, I guess. But like actually think about it. If I were to engineer something, like how would it work? Other movies that influenced me was Stargate, of course. I love Stargate. It's actually held up pretty well. And I rewatched it recently, and there's the whole setup for the whole movie. Like I totally forgot like the beginning scenes. So that was kind of cool. Watching it again, like 10 years later, I'm like, oh yeah, this.
Right.
So Stargate's awesome. Contact, really great, underrated movie. Of course, Star Wars, the original trilogy. Watched that a lot as a kid. Anytime I could get any chance I got, I'd watch those. Earth 2 was like a TV show that was kind of cool. You guys ever hear of a movie called Warriors of Virtue? I'm going to bet you haven't.
No, can't say
No?
I have.
I have.
Nothing?
I haven't seen it.
I love that movie as a kid. It's so weird. Like this kid gets dared to walk across a pipe in a sewage area, and he falls in this huge like whirlpool of water, and he wakes up in like this magical kingdom with like these ninja kangaroos, and they all control the elements. It is so awesome.
Huh.
I am sure it has not held up, but I'll just hold on to the fond memories that I have. It was cool. It inspired me. That's the point. Other movies that I love, those Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was mind blowing to me. I love that movie. And Matrix, it's just like that was when special effects it just exploded in the early 2000s. And
Right.
things were possible that were never possible before. And so that just really expanded my creative horizon as to like what's possible with art, what's possible with movies. How is technology, enhancing our art? And I love that. I love that topic. A lot of TV shows I watched. A Reboot. Do you guys ever watch Reboot? I think y'all are too young.
Nah.
You even heard of it?
I've
No?
heard of it before, but I've never
I've
seen
seen
anything.
some of it, but not enough to
You
have a
You
conversation.
whippersnappers, you're too young. Well, back in my day, Reboot was a fully CGI show. It was for kids, and it was probably one of the earliest CGI shows. I think like that and Voltron and like Beast Wars were like one of the very first like fully computer graphics generated shows, and it was awesome. The classic superhero shows, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, those are great shows. I didn't really like the Pokemon show so much, but I was really into Digimon. I love that. I love that show. I drew all the Digimon. I had like my little library in my drawing book of like the new Digimon that would be revealed every episode. I'd draw it down.
Nice.
Pretty bad. So yeah, that's kind of like the stuff that I enjoyed. That really just kind of pushed my imagination. And I love drawing as well. I drew since I could remember. It was just something that was a great pastime, something that would impress. I remember this is embarrassing. I remember in art class, I would somewhat regularly come up with this great idea with my friends and say, "Hey guys, let's do a drawing contest." I knew I was always going to win.
Oh my gosh.
It's embarrassing. Yeah,
No shame.
and pretty bad.
That's
Gotta come clean.
hilarious.
Sorry guys, if you're all out there listening. Yeah, sorry about that. It was rigged. Yeah, so drawing was great. I started off with just cartoony stuff, just drawing whatever I could, try. And then anime. I got into anime around like when I was like 11. I think we got cable. And started watching Dragon Ball Z was like my number one.
Oh yeah.
I also really liked what was that show? Tenchi Muyo was a cool anime. There was some cool sci-fi stuff in there. A lot of good character design as well. And Outlaw Star. You guys ever hear of that anime?
I've heard of it. Never seen it though.
It's a lot like Firefly. It's kind of weird.
Have you ever seen Cowboy Bebop?
Yeah.
Okay, that is really like Firefly.
That's a lot like Firefly too, right?
I like that one
Yeah.
a lot.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, those shows I just love because there was story, there was plot twists, there was just really imaginative stuff. I was just never content with just like normal stories, like normal TV shows. I could enjoy them, but I liked the sci-fi stuff because it made me think more.
Mhm.
And it made you ask the big what if questions, like what if we had to move off of Earth, or what if we encounter aliens? What would they do? What would they look like, and all that? They would definitely not look like the aliens on Star Trek. Just put it out there.
Hope not.
I mean, it'd be really convenient, but very unlikely. um, so I was pretty geeky as a kid. I liked taking apart electronics. I liked drawing. I liked I knew way too much about Star Wars, and you name it. Like I knew stuff that other kids didn't didn't know, didn't care about, whatever.
Made everyone jealous, I'm sure.
Yeah, basically. Oh yeah, they're real jealous. Yeah, I wish. Now, my family is an artistic and creative family, so they kind of fostered, the whole interest in art. And my mom was like a fashion artist kind of, and she could do portraits. My dad was a very engineering, problem solving kind of guy. He loves to do, like floor plans and schematics and plan out, this and that and electronics. And so I picked up on that. So I thank them for bestowing onto me the good traits that they had in their brains. But my whole family really enjoys, sci-fi a lot. My brothers, they're all artists in their own different ways. My middle brother, Gabriel, he's older than me. He does Photoshop concept art. So he does like Photoshop paintings of, fantasy landscapes. And he's in all kinds of cool, some sci-fi stuff too. And my older brother is a woodworker. He does wood finishing, and he's done, design and furniture design, and all kinds of really cool, like hands-on kind of art.
Nice.
Very creative, very out of the normal. Fun to look at stuff. So yeah, my family is all pretty geeky. We can all enjoy good sci-fi. Even my mom, she just, she kind of puts up with it. I think she can enjoy it for what it is. But one of my favorite things is when a family gets together. If we watch a movie, or if we're just doing like our family get together thing, because our siblings are all adults now. We don't live with mom and dad anymore. So when we come back together, it's fun to just sit down and talk about like this movie or that show or whatever.
Nice.
Like you were saying, Angela, we all just kind of discuss like the technology and stuff like that. Or sorry, that was Nate, I think. Yeah. I'm mixing it up.
Yeah.
One of you mentioned family discussions. That was Nate, yeah.
Yeah, that was Nate, because we'd all sit down and discuss the movie.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird. It was kind of like we were like, we should have got paid, because there were a few times that we'd like all sit down and talk about the movie we just watched, and I'm like, it was like a recap. It was weird.
You tear it to pieces, cool. Like criticize it or what?
No. Like how much we liked it, how it could have been better, how we liked this, and it was really good and stuff like that. But then they'd go down the whole like,
could have had a podcast.
Yeah, I know, right? We could have been famous.
Tapecast. Well, I'll tell you one big influence of my childhood in terms of my sci-fi geeky nerdiness is Mystery Science Theater 3000. Oh my goodness, that show awesome. Just changed how I looked at film. It changed how I watched and enjoyed things in a literal sense. Like when I watch things, I have to know who I'm watching it with if they don't like commentary.
Yeah. Right.
Because I will commentate.
That's so funny.
And I will make fun of, and I will make the funniest jokes in the middle of the most serious moments.
Oh, that's awesome.
That often go unappreciated. And I look around, I'm like, seriously, like, honey, that was like the greatest joke. You didn't even hear it. That happens a lot in my household. No, but yeah, Mystery Science Theater 3000 was awesome. It kind of taught me to not take things too seriously, of course, and just enjoy things and make fun of things. And I make fun of myself. I make fun of like everything.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry if I come off snarky or what is it? I'm very sarcastic sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Just know if there's any sarcastic about one another or anybody else in this world, that it's all love. We love you. It's okay. It's gonna be all right.
I make fun of you because I love you.
Yeah.
That's me. That's me in a nutshell, basically.
Nice.
Wow.
And that's why I love art and I love stories and I love sci-fi.
So much.
So. Yeah. Now we know what's wrong with me. That's your diagnosis.
Yeah. It went from geeky origin story to, oh, that's what's wrong with you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's such a positive tone.
Yeah, I think it's good to look back in your childhood, and looking at the good part of yourself. Like, how did this come about? Like, how did I become an entrepreneur? Or what led me to being, an artist? Or maybe what just led me to be, a music person, just loves music. Like, there's origins, to all this stuff. There's reasons why you love what you love. And I think, I'm 29, so I have 3 kids. And as a father, you got to kind of look back on your child and be like, okay, let's pick out the best of my childhood, the good parts that lasted and that have changed my life for good, and how can I use that to help my kids have a good childhood.
Mm.
And some of a lot of that stuff that has to do with my creativity and my enjoyment of art and movies, I hope to pass on to my kids. In the big picture of things, if you look at sci-fi as a whole genre, as an art form and a literary form, has actually done a lot of good stuff in the world. A lot of people that have designed, world-shattering technologies, in the medical field, in the aeronautics field, a lot of them were inspired by sci-fi authors of the 40s and 50s. And a lot of science fiction has actually come about, and it took someone imagining it first. So I really want to pass this on, to my kids, to learn to think outside the box and ask how things work. Ask how can things be better. Not even talking about technology anymore, just in general in life. So I'm hoping to kind of pass that legacy on to my kids.
Nice.
So,
That's awesome.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys for sharing your stories and your interesting, colorful childhoods.
Mm-hmm.
It's been fun. If any of you listeners have something similar or maybe something different, write me. You can reach me at daniel@danielgrowaphoto.com, or just write us on Facebook. Find either of us on there and send us your little story. We'd love to hear it. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Keep being awesome.
Woo!
Cool. So make sure when you guys talk that you're close to the mic, and then when you're not talking, just lean away from the mic. So just in case there's no, noises or whatever recorded.
No mouth breathing.
No mouth breathing allowed.
Ew.
Yeah, none of that. You'll be kicked off the podcast.